What's up, everybody? Welcome to State of the Nation, the Athletics Raiders podcast. I'm Jimmy Durkin here in Alameda with Vic Taver. Vic, how you doing today?
Doing good. Pretty excited.
Good. We've got Ted Nguyen over here, but first we're going to get right to our guest, Raiders offensive coordinator Greg Olson. How you doing, Ole?
I'm doing great, thanks. Good to be back.
So how's it been? I mean, obviously back here in the silver and black, and got through minicamp. What's been your takeaway so far?
Really excited. Obviously, there's a lot of new faces on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, as well as the new coaching staff. But there are some familiar faces still in the building, and that's made the transition real smooth. And certainly having Derek here made the transition very easy as well.
This is the first time you've had a quarterback and then kind of came back to him later in his career? Is that the first time it's happened for you in your coaching career?
Yeah. Well, I coached Jeff Garcia on 3 different teams. I coached with him from the 49ers, the Detroit Lions, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But actually coming back to a team, it's the first time. This is the third time I've been back with an organization. I was with the Jacksonville Jaguars 2 different times, and the Rams, once in St. Louis and once in Los Angeles. So this is actually the third time I've been back to the same organization. Certainly a lot of the players change, but there are, again, people in the building that you're familiar with, and when you establish friendships and relationships with people, it's always good to come back and see those people.
Is it kind of cool seeing where Carr is now, I suppose, when he left here, like the changes?
Yeah, I think that growth process, and again, at this profession, 10 years is a lifetime. Yeah. For a player, and so it's not very often that you get a chance to come back and see a player. And I thought, again, as I said earlier, with Jeff Garcia on 3 different teams, that doesn't happen very often. But now to see, have been here in Derek's rookie year, and then to come back now and see the growth that he's made over the 4 years that I was gone, it's just really good to see his growth, and still know that he's a young player that's ascending and will continue to get better.
Over the last 5 years, you've had opportunities to work with 3 young quarterbacks, and Derek, of course, now twice, Blake Bortles, Jared Goff, guys that have had varying degrees of success here and there. All 3 have led their team to the playoffs at one point. And we all know Derek didn't get to play in the playoff game, but all those guys have eventually led their team to the playoffs. Just what has it been like working with all 3 of those guys? What kind of similar traits do maybe those guys all have?
Well, certainly it's a challenge to play the position as a rookie or as a young quarterback in this league. When I broke into the league, as I said, I broke into the league in 2001, and I had a veteran guy in Jeff Garcia, and so it's a different mindset when you go into a situation like that. When you start out with these rookies, a lot of it's about the development, and there's certainly you have standards. The team standards don't change, but the whole goal in mind when you come to these situations with these young, high draft quarterbacks is that it's all about the development of them and the development of that position. As we all know, it's a quarterback's league, and if those guys don't develop, it's very difficult for that team to achieve any amount of success. So we do everything that we do is with the young quarterback in mind, and I've tried to keep that in mind at the different places that I've been when we've drafted a young quarterback.
Speaking of quarterbacks in your past, Drew Brees, you guys arrived at Purdue at the same time, is that right?
Yep.
And he was not recruited out of high school.
He had very few offers at Brown University, really. We were his only major offer, Division 1A offer, and certainly it was a very enjoyable time spent with him at Purdue. So I had a lot of success and felt like we had a big hand in turning that program around. Just being around him and seeing his development, as a college quarterback, and then now still, he's one of the few players. I got out of college football, in 2000. When we came in the league together, and to see 17 years later, he's the only player left really that I had been a part of in college football. There are other players that most of them have retired by now. That I'd coached at Purdue, but he's the last one that's left of my college background. So it's been real enjoyable to see the success that he's had, not only as a quarterback, but as a father and a husband.
Do you recall your first impression? I obviously had no idea he'd be, I'm sure, where he is now, man, but do you remember your first impression and the baby steps you took that first couple of years?
Yeah, I actually have an article in the West Lafayette Times there, Journal and Courier in West Lafayette, Indiana. Within a week or two, we were there. The headlines were Brees climbs the depth chart because of accuracy. And so he was just so accurate the first day he got there. And it took us about 7 days to move him all the way up to the number 2 position. We had an established senior in Billy Dicken who ended up being all Big Ten that year. and Drew backed him up as a freshman, but he climbed over 3 or 4 other guys to grab the number 2 spot as a true freshman. And you just knew his accuracy was just uncanny at that time.
So it wasn't coaching; it was just.
Exactly. Yeah. I wish I could say that. Yeah.
Well, you're back here coaching with Jon Gruden, and what was the reaction from you like when? He gets this job and then he calls you, and he told us that he always kind of had that Rolodex of guys that when he got back into coaching, he was going to get in touch with and kind of get this gang together. So when he calls you and says, "Hey, I'm taking the Raiders job. I want you to come north with me," what was that reaction like?
Well, so I was very excited. I only had an opportunity to work with him the one season in Tampa before he was let go, but he was a big influence in my coaching career and really in the way that I looked at the position of coaching a quarterback, of coordinating. I just really felt like my learning curve increased greatly in the 1 year that I was with him, and I think there's just mutual respect between us, and because of that, I'd always stayed in contact with him. Oftentimes, I would go and visit him at the FFCA in the off season, and we would do different projects, NFL football projects, and I always felt like in the back of my mind that he would get back into coaching. And he discussed it often that he wasn't done yet, and I think he was just waiting for the right timing and the right opportunity. He was fortunate; he was able to stay there in Tampa and coach his boys in high school football and be around his family. I think that was real important to him. Kind of when you're in the role as a football coach, a lot of times family takes a back seat, and it was kind of a blessing probably for him that it happened there in Tampa, and he was able to stay there and watch most of his boys get through high school. He's got one left still, but I just knew that he was a football coach. I certainly did very well as a broadcaster. But he is a football coach at heart, and at mine it would have been a waste, in my opinion, had he not gotten back into coaching. So just real excited, one, that he got back into coaching, and two, that gave me the opportunity to come back and coach with him.
You talk about how hard it is on family. For you, a lot of different stops, a lot of moving around. How difficult has that been just throughout your whole career?
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially once children are added into the picture. When I left Oakland, the first time my family stayed here in California, so I was 3 years away, and I missed my kids' 5th, 6th, and 7th grade years. So it's really, to be back here and to be back where my family's at and my home is at, it's a really special time right now in my life.
So you and Jon Gruden, tell me if this is true. I heard a story. You guys met at Jeff Garcia's wedding?
Yes.
So tell me about that. How that was?
Yeah, I was here in Gilroy. Yeah. Actually, just down the road, he got married in Gilroy, and it was a beautiful setting there, and we got seated next to one another, and so it certainly brought conversation. At that time, I was with the St. Louis Rams, and Mark Bulger had just come off a really good year. It was our first year there in St. Louis, and so we just kind of got to talking football. And again, at that time, when I first, like I said, when I broke in the league in 2001, I was with Steve Mariucci in the 49ers when Jon was the head coach in Oakland. So I'd actually met him at a bocce ball tournament, just briefly met at Madden's bocce ball, or Mariucci and Madden's bocce ball tournament, and that was the first time I actually met him. And then at Jeff's wedding, we got a chance to spend more time together, and really had a great great impression of him. And I've always had a ton of respect for what he's done and who he is and what he stands for.
Just like X's and O's on a napkin at the wedding?
Oh, yeah, he's football. That's the one thing. None of that, those stories are not embellished. They're not exaggerated. He is all football all the time. It's very refreshing if you enjoy that, which obviously I do and have. What I like about him is that's what he is, and that's who he is, and that's not going to change. A lot of people have asked, has he changed any in the 10 years that you were away? And I'd say unequivocally no. He hasn't one bit, not his desire to win, his desire to prepare, his desire to present to the players. He still has a great energy about him, and even so more so now, I think he's even probably got a bigger chip on his shoulder being out of it 10 years to prove people that he's the right guy to be back here.
Would you say you're the same way, maybe down a notch or two, or in terms of all football, or just
Has he chopped it down? Excuse me.
Are you? Would you say you're like the same as he is, but just maybe down?
I'd like to believe that. I just think, to me, again, I've always had a great passion for this, for the sport, really, and for the position of the quarterback. I think it's such a critical position, and always had a great passion to teach it and to coach it. But I'd never been really around anybody like him. In terms of there's not a minute in the building that's wasted when you're with him, and so it was very refreshing for me. It's very eye-opening when I first got there, and I've tried to, again, since I left him, I've tried to just kind of pattern my style and the way that I approach the game and the profession the way he did.
You look back at that 2008 Tampa staff, I mean, a lot of names that people would know. I mean, obviously his brother Jay, Gus Bradley on that staff, and Sean McVay, a young Sean McVay. What was he like back then, and what was it like kind of seeing him under Gruden way back when? Yeah,
it was interesting. John let go of his secretary, and so he actually brought Sean in as his secretary, is how it started out, to come in and type up practice scripts and do some of the those type of skills that we were missing there because we didn't have anyone in the office to do that. And so that's where Sean started out, and then he had him help out with the wide receivers. But obviously very sharp, very detailed. He comes from a football background, obviously with his grandfather. So knew then at a young age, certainly there was a lot of passion, and his work ethic really is matched as well. I thought that was one of the most interesting things. I didn't spend enough time with him in Tampa at that time to kind of really get a real feel for him. But when I went and coached for him a year ago, I thought, boy, gosh, he could be really Coach Gruden's twin or son. Or the mannerisms in presenting to the team. Though again, the work ethic, the passion, but the mannerisms and the different sayings that they use, very eerily similar. Yeah. So it was kind of neat.
Is he also one of those like 4 a.m. guys, kind of?
Yeah. About? Oh yeah, he doesn't sleep much at all, and very driven.
Is that a fun thing, like having a guy so fired up at 4 a.m. For you? I mean,
I do, and I would say again, and I've been with young quarterbacks that have been with Coach Gruden and Coach McVay, and I've been with older guys, and whether they like them or not, every quarterback that I've ever been that's been with, I've always said, it doesn't get old. The way that you prepare and the way that they are, the energy, the enthusiasm, it really doesn't get old. Some people, I think for some people at first they think, he can't be this way all the time. Maybe it's phony. It's a 3-week gig, but it's not. It's that way every day. And it's very refreshing. And again, for the quarterbacks, they always have to be on their toes. You just don't miss anything with that type of personality and those type of head coaches.
Do you have to make sure you have your coffee like at 3 in the morning?
You gotta have something. You gotta have something. Go through about a half rack of Diet Pepsi before 9 a.m. I'm not a real coffee drinker, so it's good.
As you've watched OTAs, minicamp, all this, I mean, everybody knows what Derek Carr brings to the table. But have there been any big surprises for you that guys that have jumped out at you that were a lot better than you thought?
Well, when you look at the guys, like for instance, in the backfield. It's having someone like Marshawn Lynch, and having seen what Marshawn Lynch has done in this league and in Seattle, and then coming here, you don't get a real feel for the running backs because of the non-contact rules. Yeah. But someone that wasn't here that came here that we're real excited about is Doug Martin. Mm-hmm. He's shown a lot of real good qualities right now as a back. So excited about Doug. Love when you look at I'm just talking about the newer players. And Jordy Nelson, someone like Jordy Nelson. Very strong player still, great character, great teammate. Excited to see him on the field every day. I think that that group is gelling. I think that, Amari Cooper has been fantastic, really to work with. And again, it's right now we're out here in shorts with no contact for any of these guys, but their work ethic and their energy and their commitment so far has been great overall as a unit, really from the offensive line to tight ends, to running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers. We've had great commitment from the group. We have very few guys who have missed days, and they've given it all of the coaches have asked thus far. So it's been a pleasure to work with this group.
Last year, your team was among the bottom of the league when it comes to play-action usage. I believe the former staff thought it wasn't Carr's strength to have his back towards the defense. Obviously, play-action is going to be a big part of the offense this year. Did you notice that he struggled with that on film, and can you talk about the difference between reading a defense on a regular drop back compared to a play-action play?
Yeah, we don't see it with Derek. We see that being one of his strengths, to be honest with you. I think the play-action game is one of his strengths. The difference being, obviously, in the play-action, you are turning your back to the defense. So as opposed to when you're just dropping back, you're able to scan the defense throughout your drop. But I think where he's at in his career, there's a lot of tips and tells about what the coverage is going to be before the snap. So once that ball is snapped and he turns his back to the defense on a play action, gets his head back around, he's able to, again, based on his pre-snap read, get back and diagnose the play once he turns his head back around to see that they're still in the coverage that he had identified before the snap. So, again, we're in shorts right now. No live rushes, but certainly play action is still part of what we do in the off season, and we think he's done very well with it thus far.
Your first time here, your receiving core, I'll be nice and say it was challenged. Didn't really have a deep threat. Now you have Martavis Bryant. I mean, obviously, Merry Christmas to you. Yeah. What's it been like to have him on the field and kind of the big plays he can give you guys?
Yeah, extremely explosive athlete. He jumped out at you right away on the first day that he got here. So he's explosive and big, and usually you don't see players of that size have that kind of explosion. So that's been good. But really, again, you look at the receiving group as a whole with, I think Amari Cooper, if you didn't know any, but 20 years ago, you'd probably drafted him as a linebacker looking at his physique, how built he is. So big, strong athlete there, and Jordy Nelson's a tall player. So really when those three guys, come off the bus, pretty good-looking group. And then Seth Roberts is also a tall wide receiver. So a good group overall, really. And you've had some newcomers and Switzer and, some other guys that have jumped out. But go back to Martavis, certainly those guys don't come along very often with that kind of size and speed and explosive abilities.
You mentioned Coop. He's actually gotten bigger every year, I think, the last 3 years. Is there a point where you're like, whoa, that's too much? Or is he?
I think as long as he continues to maintain his flexibility, which we've seen him make some great catches as he's been out here thus far. But as long as he's able to maintain his speed and his flexibility, then certainly we're good with that. I think receivers, they come in all different sizes and shapes. He's comfortable with where he's at. Right now, he likes the weight room. He spends a lot of time in the weight room. I think he takes a lot of pride in maintaining his strength. So we don't have an issue with it, again, as long as he's able to maintain that flexibility.
The Raiders are going to head back to London this year. Do you have an apartment over there? You've been, 5 years in a row, I think?
5 in a row, and I think I'm going on my 7th or 8th trip to London, so I'm sure I probably lead the league in coaching staffs or staffs that have been to London. So, I enjoy the trip over there. I think, it's a unique experience somewhat. It's a chance to see a different part of the world and a chance to, be around some rabid fans that, although they don't have a real understanding of the game, they are there to cheer. They're loud. They cheer constantly throughout the game, and it's a kind of electrifying atmosphere. So it's an enjoyable game.
My experience is the team that's winning, the fans kind of jump on board like, yeah, that's my team.
Correct. Yeah. They have no idea of what they probably cheer louder for the PATs and the field goals than they do actual touchdowns. So still different.
Do you have a chance to do anything when you go there to visit, or are you pretty much busy with?
No, we're busy there. That's the one downfall. You really don't get a chance to go spend any time really around town in London. But nonetheless, it's still a very enjoyable experience.
All right, well, it's time to get a little break. I don't know how much of a break you'll take, but about 6 weeks off for the guys before they head up to Napa and get going with training camp. So
I think it's never, whether you're a coach or you're a player, the thought of an off season really doesn't exist anymore. I think there's such pressure on every team to win, the pressure to win, if you look at it as pressure. But to maintain your conditioning and to maintain your strength and to master your craft as a player, I think it's a full-time job. And I think there is a time here for them to kind of recover, let their bodies recover somewhat. So then, both strength and fatigue-wise, they need to recover. And they'll take time to recover, but then they'll start hitting the weights here in probably 7 to 10 days. They'll take a week off, and then they'll be right back at the weight room and the training. And they all train different ways. A lot of them have personal trainers and personal nutritionists that they work with. And for the coaching staff, it's the same way. They take a week off. I plan on going to Florida and going fishing for a week with my son, but then we'll be right back in here. Getting after it a little bit. So, if you enjoy what you do and you have passion for what you do, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like a job. I pinch myself, I think, every morning when I wake up that I'm able to do what I do for a living. So it's enjoyable.
Thanks a lot for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys. It's
Enjoy
good to
that
see
1
you.
week off.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Ole.
Take care.
All right, hey, that was a good conversation with Ole. Gotta love hanging out with Ole, huh?
Yeah, he's the best. I think everyone's happy he's back, the players and the coaches who were here the first time, and just Gruden's excited about him, so I think it should be good.
We know Derek's happy to have him back, and we've had some questions last week about you haven't heard a whole lot about Carr. I mean that's kind of what you want at this point, right? You don't want a whole lot being talked about your quarterback that you're basically relying on as he's the guy. I mean he's one of the unquestioned pieces on this roster. I mean, you know what you have there, you think, and you expect him to just be a good, solid piece of this offense.
Yeah, they're just playing catch pretty much. But we have a guy here who's breaking it down beyond that. So we have a guy here who's going to have some pointers about Derek Carr.
All right, what do you think, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, Carr looked pretty good in camp. He made some really nice throws, had Gruden pretty excited. But, he's picking up this new offense, and obviously it's not easy. Matt Ryan struggled pretty bad when he picked up Kyle Shanahan's offense. It's his first year, and Shanahan's and Gruden's offense should be pretty similar. So we'll see how he really picks it up when we get into preseason and into the season. One thing I noticed in practice that he's kind of struggling throwing a deep post pattern, and that's kind of going to be a staple part of this offense. We saw Marquise Goodwin, score a bunch of touchdowns on that pattern, so I assume that's going to be a big part of this offense. And he missed a few. He just needs to get his timing down with his receivers, so I think that'll come with a little more time.
One thing I noticed was that Connor Cook is having trouble with all the patterns. Holy smokes!
Maybe that's a personal problem.
He's having a rough week. I just, I wasn't. The bar wasn't high for me going in for Connor Cook. But I think you have to be a little concerned if you're Jon Gruden with what you saw this week.
And it seems like they really want him to be the number 2. I mean, even when Gruden's talking about him, he was asked about Christian Hackenberg today, who they obviously released, didn't last here long. And Gruden's talking about kind of after Carr, he's like, we don't even have enough reps for Connor Cook, and we really don't have any reps for EJ. Almost like they're really trying to build up Connor as the number 2, but ultimately when they have to make that decision and they have to come up with that depth chart, I don't see that happening. And I said to you, Vic, when we're watching practice, I wouldn't be surprised. We know Gruden, the way he manipulates this roster. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of August he's not releasing Connor Cook and maybe looking for a new number 3.
Yeah, I think it's probably not fair to EJ because I think you kind of know what he can do. I think Gruden kind of knows what he brings. So you want to give Cook as much of a chance as you can to kind of get up to speed and kind of maybe show you some signs why he was a guy teams wanted to trade for on draft day, which you haven't seen so far. So I do think at this point EJ Manuel is going to have a pretty relaxing month off and not worry too much about the number 2 job.
Well, they've got a good trade relationship with the Cowboys. Maybe the Cowboys wanted him at one point. Maybe they'll want him to come back up Dak.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have to talk about Khalil Mack. I mean, he's
who?
He's not here, so why should we talk about him? We're very much on record with this whole situation that we don't blame Khalil at all for not showing up. I mean, he's guaranteed just the 13 and whatever million on that 5th-year option, and if he were to show up here, blow out his knee, any of those long-term guarantees are gone. He deserves a new deal. He knows it. As I think we've discussed before, all part of this has to be that the Raiders kind of publicly last year, in last offseason talked about, Reggie McKenzie said, I want to get this guy extended this offseason. We want to extend Carr, we want to extend Khalil, and we'd like to extend Gabe Jackson. Was kind of how he publicly presented it as that being the priorities. Carr, Mack, and then if we can work out something to get Gabe, we really would like to do that too. Well, they end up doing Carr, they end up doing Gabe, and they have to tell Khalil, sorry, we got to wait till next year. And a lot of that could be, when you sign these deals, you got to have that cash on hand to pay these guys their salary, their signing bonuses, which is going to be a lot of money. And so, if you're Khalil, this has gone on quite a while now. At this point, you're going to get paid. I don't blame him one bit for not showing up. There's that crowd out there that always says, "Oh, the guy needs to live up to his contract." The way these contracts in the NFL work. If he gets hurt out here, they will have no problem at all not giving him another deal, giving him a lowballing him on his next deal. So, more power to Khalil if you're me.
Yeah, I'm not speaking for Khalil, but I'm sure he understands the Derek Carr thing, like why you get the quarterback.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine that Gabe's kind of a head scratcher for Khalil. Like, why? Why did we do that then? And why am I not being taken care of? And I think he wants to be. He's definitely a team guy. He wants to be here for his team. But I think he mentioned the leverage. He has to look out for himself. So I'm not sure when this will end, when it will play out. If it's mid training camp or end of training camp, but. Obviously, he and the Raiders and the agents are waiting for Aaron Donald to get something done, and vice versa. Those are two guys who are going to set the market. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not sure it's going to be anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm sure if you're Khalil, you say, okay, I can see why you did Gabe last year just because he doesn't have the fifth-year option like I am. I'll live with that, but once the next offseason comes around, you take care of me right away, and they still haven't taken care of him. And
when you come back and say we don't have enough money because we gave Gabe Jackson a long-term deal, and you're like, wait a minute, why did you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
And Gabe's a great player. I think Gabe's should have been a Pro Bowl type guy the last couple of years. So I just think he's a young guy up front who you want to be part of the mix, and it makes sense. But I just think when you rank guys, when you rank needs and guys who want to get signed long-term wise, the foundations of the franchise. Khalil Mack probably should not be a free agent at this point, as far as a holdout at least.
Yeah, one other point I'll address is that I've heard this a lot. Well, wouldn't it be smart for the Raiders to sign him before Aaron Donald signs? That assumes that just because the Raiders want... I'm sure that, the Raiders would love to sign him before Aaron Donald signs and sets a market that Khalil could say, okay, I need that or more. But it doesn't work that way. Just because you want to sign him first doesn't mean that Khalil is going to agree to sign first. He'll maybe sign first if you give him every single dollar that he's looking for. But a lot of it is, you don't know quite until other deals happen. You're not quite sure what you should be demanding. And, it's an interesting thing. Because, Khalil's deal is going to, most of the money there is going to get paid out when he's in Las Vegas and not being taxed nearly as much. Aaron Donald's playing in California, playing in L.A., where he's going to be living with the state taxes that we all three of us love and enjoy. So that's part of all this. It's complicated stuff, and it's not just going to get. You can't just snap their fingers, even though everybody wants it to happen. But the idea that why don't they just do it before Aaron Donald signs? It's not nearly that simple.
Khalil's agent, Joel Siegel's been doing it for 30 years. A lot of top guys learned all the ways you got to do this. And patience is definitely key. Patience is a virtue. Leverage is a virtue. So there's no rush to get something done in his mind. I'm sure that's what he told Khalil, look, at some point we're going to get you the most money we can. And this is how we're going to get it done.
Yep. All right, well, let's talk about kickers. Because
nice transition.
Well, kickers on a contract, so now we're going to talk kickers.
All right.
Last week we got headlines off the podcast, and it was something that everybody noticed that it was nothing but Eddie Pinheiro out there doing the kicks in our open practice last week.
We were duped. Hoodwinked.
Because then
bamboozled.
Tuesday we all come out and we see it again. Oh man, Eddie Pinheiro, poor Giorgio is shagging field goals.
Dead.
Well, this is why you got to be able to. When we only can see one practice a week, you only see what you see. The Raiders are actually still doing this as a competition. They're having Eddie days and Giorgio days. So And today being the third day of the week was kind of a mix. They both got a chance. So Giorgio's day was Wednesday. I was not there for it, but Vic, you were there. And what do you now that we know this really is still a competition? Although the way Gruden talks, I think we can all imagine still that Pinheiro is the leader in the clubhouse. But how do you judge this kicker competition? Giorgio on Thursday here, the final day of minicamp, he did look better. Pinheiro shanked a couple of bad kicks.
Yeah, Giorgio wasn't that sharp yesterday, but today he definitely made 3 out of 4 kicks and 1 to end minicamp. The team roars their approval when he makes the last kick.
Yeah, because he missed the first.
Right.
Gruden, he makes the first 2, and then Gruden says, "All right, if you miss this one, we're going to do this whole practice all over from the beginning." And then I guess they made up some imaginary flag or whatever. He ended up getting a second because he missed that one, and then he got a second try, and they did go ahead and make the last one.
Right. Well, Pinheiro was sharp in college. I think he was 17 or 18 last year. But if you watch him so far the last few weeks, definitely the bigger foot. But he's missed some. He missed some today, missed some the other day. So I guess that's where it comes down to. It comes down maybe to the foot versus the accuracy, if Giorgio's more accurate one. But should be a good battle. I think they both said the other day they both like each other a lot. They're both good people. There's no animosity. Johnny Townsend's kind of caught in the middle of the holder. Was Pinheiro's buddy from Florida. He's done a good job of learning how to hold both for lefties and righties, and so everyone's on the same page. I think whoever's the best preseason probably wins the job.
So, Ted, how much are you looking forward to? I can't wait till once we get these preseason games going and we can get Ted to have some film to study in this battle between Pinheiro and Tavecchio. How do you break down this battle so far?
Well, I definitely need to brush up on my kicker techniques and all that. But I thought Pinheiro had a pretty good day on Monday. I think he was, I was counting. I think he was perfect except for he missed one from over like 55 yards or something like that. But who's the kicker? The special teams guy that was really impressive is Townsend because he was booting the heck out of the ball on Monday. I think he corner coffined a punt from the opposite 30 right to the 1 yard line, and that had Gruden pretty amped up. And there was one that looked like a shank, but it was like a bullet that came right at the 1 yard line, and I thought it was a shank, but afterwards he talked about it and said he did it on purpose because that was a type of punt they were working on, and it went right out at the 1 yard line, so that was pretty impressive.
I'm not buying Townsend. He doesn't sing. He doesn't kick balls in the garbage cans.
He's Captain America.
He doesn't play the piano.
Come on.
I'm not buying the new guy.
You're not buying Captain America?
I miss Marquette.
He's too perfect. There's got to be something wrong with that guy.
Let's kind of run down some of the highlight players who've stood out really here, and I think one guy that has definitely been noticeable on that offense is Martavis Bryant. I mean, you see that speed, you see that his ability to go deep. Derek Carr, I think, is going to really like this weapon.
Yeah, big play receiver, which they haven't had here for a while. A guy who can take the top off the defense and just he's bigger than I thought he was. He's definitely got some muscle on him besides being just fast and a great athlete. So I think everyone's excited about him. We talked to Ole about him. I think it definitely looks like a big part of the offense.
Yeah, I think a big part of Shanahan's offense, McVay's offense, and Gruden's offense is having that speedster that could run that skinny post down the middle of the offense. And with the Rams, they had Sammy Watkins do it. With the Niners, they had Marquise Goodwin do it. And I think that guy for the Raiders is going to be Bryant. And yeah, he's fast. He's gotten behind the defense a few times during this minicamp.
And he's had some issues in the past in Pittsburgh, so I love how he's in the contract year. Definitely something to prove, something to play for. I'm not sure it's great for the Raiders long term as far as keeping him around, but as far as getting the most of his ability this year, I think it bodes well for him.
One thing, they're going to have some size at receiver, and there's a couple of guys that I'm kind of excited to watch as we get up into training camp and in the preseason games. Some of the young guys, Marcel Aitman. I mean, the 7th round pick, Saeed Blacknell. Those guys do bring some size. I mean, I don't know if they're going to make the team. I don't know if they're going to do anything. But, when you consider, we've all talked about, does Seth Roberts make this team? How did that receiver group turn out? I mean, those guys, just watching them a little bit, seeing them up close, I'm excited to see what they'll do once we start really playing football. It'll be worth watching. A guy that also has looked pretty good, and I know the coaching staff has talked highly of him, is Ryan Switzer. So what have you guys seen out of him? I mean, he's a guy that we know can contribute in special teams, but looks like he might have a chance to contribute offensively a little bit too.
Yeah, Gruden called him a force in the slot so far. Just see his quickness. He definitely has good hands. I think they can move guys around a lot, I think, in this offense. I think he'll be a guy that can kind of plug in there in the slot in some spots and make some plays when there's other guys are covered.
Yeah, I really liked Ryan Switzer coming out of North Carolina, and I was surprised he wasn't a little more productive in his rookie year. But I guess they had Cole Beasley in Dallas, and they kind of play the same position. So I'm excited to see what he could do. The first week we were there at OTAs, he didn't really get that many reps, but he started really getting a lot more reps with the first team at minicamp, and he looked impressive running routes, and he created some space. So it's pretty exciting to have that guy in the middle for Derek Carr.
All right, we do have to hit the panic button because Garyon Conley, after speaking to us on Tuesday,
we jinxed him.
He jinxed himself. He said he feels great physically, and then
we asked him the question, how do you feel?
Yeah,
I feel great. Aha.
Yeah. Well, he ends up, he did not practice the last 2 days of minicamp. A little deja vu, guys. That was exactly the same thing that happened last year. Now, Gruden, the difference, at least this year, is we have Jon Gruden, who will tell us what's going on with a little groin strain or whatever. Expects him to be fine by training camp, which, we'll see. I mean, that obviously he's a guy that needs to prove that he can be out there and stay healthy. I mean, I know he talked about how he never had any injuries really before the shin injury, but now dealing with a little bit of a groin, and when he spoke to us on Tuesday, he mentioned that last year when he returned, was it week 3, week 2 that he returned, played those 2 games, he probably wasn't physically ready, probably shouldn't have returned, which that's now 2 guys off that roster that have told us that they played last year when they probably weren't physically ready, because obviously Derek Carr kind of admitted at the end of the year that he...
So Derek didn't give the coaches much of a chance. Derek came out to practice the next day and started throwing the ball around. I mean, He put the coaches in a bad spot. Sorry, Derek, but he did. But yeah, definitely, I think we'll see. I mean, I think Garyon Conley, they've seen enough already. They see the skill set, they see the athleticism, they see him being a number 1 cornerback, so they want him on the field as soon as possible. I'm not sure they're going to push him to be ready for the first day of training camp, but it seems like it should be okay.
Yeah, he said he wasn't happy with his performance when he did play, but I thought it was a pretty strong game from him. He looked like a really good corner, and if that was a bad game from him, then we should be expecting a lot in year 2.
All right, let's talk about a couple offensive linemen before we get close to wrapping it up and hit a couple questions. One guy that has been talked about a little bit this week, Brandon Parker, the third-round right tackle. And we saw on Tuesday there was a little incident where Fadal Brown kind of tried to take some shots at him, and Parker stood up for himself. Fadal Brown got kicked out of the practice, a 15-yard penalty, set up a game-winning field goal, and getting to talk with guys like Kelechi Osemele, Rodney Hudson, Tom Cable today. They all liked kind of the way that the rookie stood up for himself.
Yeah, it's a physical game, and I think people want to see you can not back down from other guys. I think it's important for a rookie to come in and show that you are tough. I mean, everyone's tough, but you are not going to back down from anyone kind of questioning what you're doing out there.
All right, and then David Sharp, a 4th-round pick from last year. Interesting comments today from Tom Cable. I mean, he spoke very, very highly of him as a guy that he could see being, having a 10-year career in this league as a right tackle. A little bit interesting because he's basically played left tackle for them out there on the practice field. But that's considering we know that there were concerns about the depth on this offensive line and some of the young depth. That's a good sign to hear that Tom Cable really thinks highly of him. Not a guy that they really want to be a starter this year. Presumably you want your starting tackles to be some combination of Donald Penn, Colton Miller, and Brandon Parker. But if he's a guy that is a good backup swing tackle for a 4th-round pick from last year, that's pretty good.
Also a good sign that Cable's willing to look at the guys from last year, not just his own guys, but guys he inherited, trying to find the best out of those guys. And he sees something in Sharp he likes.
He's not the only coach that spoke highly of Sharp's potential, too. There's other coaches that really like Sharp's potential at tackle. So, but I was surprised to hear him say that he thought he could be a really good right tackle because, like you said, he's been practicing all at left tackle this whole time. But right tackle is such a big question mark for this team that it does make sense to have him compete there because you have Penn coming back at left tackle and then you have Miller backing him up. The right tackle position needs a little more competition, in my opinion.
Maybe he's more of a plug-in guy this year at left tackle, where maybe his future and long-term could be right tackle. But as far as what they may need this year, the guy who can jump in at left tackle because they don't want Parker playing left tackle. Brandon can't play left tackle. So I just think maybe in terms of if you had to throw a guy in this year at the last minute, then that's the guy you're going to go with.
Well, and for them to speak highly of him as a right tackle, because there have been some legitimate concerns of can he play right tackle, considering he's admitted that he's got the vision issue, a little bit of blurry vision in the right eye. So, there was the draft day report that he's blind in the right eye. That's not quite accurate, but he's got blurry vision there, and so that's kind of been something that you thought could be a concern. But if they feel like he's a guy that can be a stalwart right tackle in this league, then that it sounds like they've kind of eased those concerns.
I think a key thing which Tom mentioned was they're not wearing pads. So anything he says about linemen at this point can really not be taken too seriously, because the way he took to Napa, the weather's hot, the pads are on, guys are going at it. Then we'll see who can play where and what Tom likes about these guys.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, the one thing I will say is the thing with Sharp is you're not really concerned with how physical he is, because he's a physical player. You're more concerned with, does he have the feet and athleticism to be able to hang on, play on the edge. So, you could see some of that in some of the pass rushing drills here with even without pads. But like you said, you could really tell when the pads come on who they are.
All right, we're going to hit 3 quick questions as we move on to State of the Nation Mail. As always, every week, you guys can send us questions using the hashtag SOTNMail, or go on to The Athletic and log in and head to our previous week's podcast and leave questions there in the comments. I know Vic went through and answered most of them, so I think we already took care of you there. But yeah, well, I did tell Vic that we need him going and commenting more on the site, so he took care of you there. But 3 quick questions. This one is just a simple answer here from London Raider. Asked, do they have a surface like the baseball diamond at the Coliseum to practice kicking on? And no, they do not. That's something you got to get used to for the couple of games. You get 2 preseason games a year on it, and then the way they tend to schedule. I don't know how's it scheduled this year. Are they doing like the only one home game in the first 4?
I think
so. So yeah, usually they kind of purposely only have one home game in the first 4. So you only usually get one regular season game a year now that you have to deal with it. So no, they don't have any real way to practice that. That's just something they got to deal with when it comes up. But
just score touchdowns.
Score touchdowns. Well, PA, yeah, exactly. Don't have to worry about it on a PAT. All right, and then Brandon asks, if you had to project a starting D line right now, who do you guys got? Start with you, Ted.
I got Jelly, Mario Edwards inside, Khalil Mack, maybe if he gets signed, and Bruce Irvin. But I like having Hurst and Arden Key coming off the bench and in situational pass rush situations and where they could get some rest and come in on third downs. I think they could be really dangerous.
Vic?
I'll go with I like Jelly. I'll probably go with Hurst in the middle next to Jelly. I'll go with Bruce Irvin and of course Tank Carradine. Wait!
Sorry,
Khalil Mack. I'm sorry, Khalil Mack should be back by then. I don't know, but we'll see. That's Khalil Mack.
Khalil Mack. Yeah, if we're talking week 1 of the regular season, not week 1 of the preseason. I just don't feel like this coaching staff loves Mario Edwards. I mean, I think
it's pretty clear.
Everything they say. I mean, how many times has Gruden, said, "Hey, Mario's always got some injuries," and
you signed Frosty Rucker, great player, God bless him, but Gruden just goes on and on how great he is, all the things he can do, and Mario's all right. I just think that's. To me, there's so many clear signs I keep sending him.
Yeah, he's got to. I don't know that he's on this roster.
He's got to show up in Napa and play well and play all the time. Like he can't miss anything. I think that's been a knock on him. He gets injury prone. I don't know if lazy's on the word you hear about him. So I think he has to really show well in training camp.
There's always the difference between being injured and being hurt, right, guys? And I think that's the difference. The difference there is that if a guy's injured, no coaches don't get mad at guys that are injured. But when guys aren't out there because they're hurt. And I think that's where we saw the calling out of Obi Melifonwu a little bit. I think they kind of thought he was a guy that is hurt, not injured. And that doesn't go over nearly as well with football coaches. And
Mario does have fans still. Reggie McKenzie's still a big believer in him. And Tom Shaw swears by just like the combination of the power, the athleticism, just what he brings speed-wise. I think Tom Shaw really thinks he's a special kind of specimen. So I think it's still there for me. We're not saying he's a dead duck, but needs to show well at camp.
Yeah, it's a contract year, too, so needs to.
Yeah. All right, final question, and then we are going to wrap it up here. This one comes in from Danny Hernandez. He says, heading into training camp, which position group has the most to prove? And asked, is the linebacker group the weakest position group on the roster?
Probably the same answer for both. The linebackers have most to prove and the weakest spot. I think Derek Johnson. We're not going to know. Talk about a guy who we're not going to know about for a while. Everyone says he's been great great leader, knows the defense already, gets guys in the right place. But he was let go for a reason. Is he washed up? Is he having luck? Can he play a whole game? Can he chase down tight ends or running backs? So we won't know till the preseason at best. So that's a key spot because, like Gruden mentioned, there's been a turnstile linebacker in an inside linebacker spot. They think he's the guy. They want him. They need him to be the guy. And if not, you go with Brandon Morrow or Nicholas Morrow or Markel Lee. Brandon Morrow is a closer for the Cubs, right?
Yeah.
my bad. So Markel Lee or Nicholas Morrow. So I think Derek Johnson's a key guy to see what he has left.
And I think we probably won't really know how much he has until week 1.
Yeah.
Just because as a veteran, they're not going to throw him out there a whole lot in the preseason. It was a couple years ago when we spent the whole offseason getting the Ben Heaney hype train going. And I think we knew kind of early on in that preseason even that he was not going to cut it. And then it took him like 2 weeks into the season.
You go back to Curtis Lofton. Curtis Lofton, a veteran guy. Oh, he's great. The players love him. Leadership type guy. He's got something left. And the bell rings. You're like, holy smokes!
He was great on the goal line against run plays. He was like elite.
Good memory.
But couldn't do anything else. You agree? Ted? You got any?
I think the cornerback spot.
Yeah.
Because cornerback is so important nowadays with all the passing in the league, and there's just not much proven players in the cornerback position because projected starters are Gary Conley, and obviously we know what happened with him last year. Rashawn Melvin had a really good year last year, but it was only 1 year, so he has a lot to prove as well. And it's such an important position, and the Raiders have been so bad at that position for so long that it's a position that really needs to shine this coming year, especially in this defense where they're playing a lot of bump and run and going to be on islands a lot.
What are your thoughts on Darryl Worley? You like him at all? You watch him?
I haven't seen him much, but he played a lot of zone coverage in Carolina, not as much man. So that's going to be a little bit of a difference because he's going to be asked to play bump and run man coverage in this defense, whereas Carolina just sat back in zone a lot. So we'll see.
And nickel probably be Leon Hall or Gilchrist probably nickel. So
one thing, Gruden did mention today that they want to get Nick Nelson out there. They think he's a guy that can compete as a nickel cornerback as well. So obviously he's hurt and not participating now, but once he gets out there, they're going to throw him out there in that competition a little bit. The secondary has a lot to prove overall. A guy like Carl Joseph, He's pretty much in a contract year as well. Because next offseason they'll have to decide, do they pick up his 5th-year option? And, right, you look at the last 3 guys that they've had to make that decision on. Coop was an easy one. Khalil Mack, an easy one. DJ Hayden, an easy one in a different direction. But Carl is a legitimate question mark going into his 3rd year that will you next offseason want to pick up his 5th-year option? This year's going to determine it, I think.
I agree. It's a big year for Carl Joseph.
All right, guys. Well, we've made it here through the off-season program. It's time for about 6 weeks off. The Raiders will reconvene in Napa in late July. We'll reconvene then. I don't think we are going to have any shows until then. Maybe if anything comes down the pipe in the middle, we'll
thinking like a big training camp send off. Maybe go to Ricky's on that last Wednesday or Thursday,
before training camp.
Maybe get a player or something. Maybe a player wants to have one last big meal.
Yeah, maybe early that week before they all start moving up there.
Yeah.
And
maybe somebody signs. That could be a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know if that Khalil Mack will be signed before that. I think Khalil Mack's going to have to ship the wine to his house this year. I don't know if he's going to be picking it up on his own.
Yeah, I don't get any sense that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Nope. All right, guys. Well, hey, we really appreciate you listening. As always, go over to Apple Podcasts and subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating. Leave us a review. Google Play, Stitcher. By the time we have another show, I would hope we are up on Spotify, but we're on YouTube, we're on SoundCloud, we are everywhere. And as always, you can check us out on The Athletic, where our podcasts are always free. But if you do want to subscribe, you want to be able to read all of Vic's content, all of Ted's content, you can go to theathletic.com/State of the Nation. Try us out for free for 1 week, then get 30% off your annual plan. All right, guys, that'll do it. Time to take a little bit of break. I know I'm a bit exhausted from the NBA Finals, all that editing going on there. So good to get some time off, and hey, we'll come back to you again next month as the Raiders get ready for training camp in Napa.